The current political landscape ahead of the pivotal midterm elections is defined less by triumphant declarations and more by a palpable sense of apprehension, even among those previously radiating unshakable confidence. It is within this atmosphere of cautious forecasting that recent statements from former President Donald J. Trump regarding the Republican Party's prospects of maintaining control of the House of Representatives have drawn significant attention and analysis. The underlying difficulty, which Trump himself appeared to concede in a recent interview, is the harsh statistical reality facing a president's party during the first midterm election cycle, a historically arduous climb that often results in legislative losses. While the former president expressed a firm commitment to winning, his qualifying statement that, statistically, victory is inherently difficult suggests an acknowledgment of the steep incline the GOP must navigate. This public concession signals a significant shift from the typical unwavering optimism often associated with the party's rhetoric, and invites a deeper scrutiny of the key factors that could determine the balance of power on Capitol Hill. The central uncertainty, as articulated by Trump, revolves around the efficacy and timing of his sweeping economic initiatives, particularly policies involving broad tariffs and substantial investment, and whether these measures will translate into tangible benefits for the average American voter before the ballots are. The administration has steadfastly asserted that its aggressive economic strategy, which includes broad tariffs on imports designed to protect domestic industries and a focus on tax reduction, is responsible, invigorating the stock market and attracting greater domestic investment. According to this framework, these actions are fundamentally transforming the American economy, establishing what Trump has frequently championed as the greatest economy in. Yet, the effectiveness of this message in the current climate is being severely tested by persistent voter anxiety concerning the skyrocketing cost of living. The perception of a robust national economy often clashes sharply with the frustrating reality of rising prices at the grocery store or the pump. While the overarching data on employment might look encouraging, if voters feel that their real wages are stagnating or shrinking due to inflation, the political credit traditionally afforded to a strong economy may fail to materialize. This vulnerability is precisely where the Democrats have managed to find traction, utilizing kitchen table economics as their primary campaigning wedge. The shifting narratives employed by Trump himself regarding inflation further underscore the communication challenge. Over the past few weeks, the former president has offered differing explanations for the cost of living crisis, at times dismissing the issue of rising prices as a political hoax perpetrated by his opponents, at other times explicitly laying the blame at the feet of the previous administration, and then subsequently promising that his own economic policies will inevitably resolve the distress in the coming year. This lack of a consistent, unified message on such a critical voter concern poses a strategic risk. When confronted by high prices, voters frequently demand clarity and a single, trustworthy narrative. The appearance of fluctuating positions could arguably undermine confidence in the party's ability to stabilize the situation. It is instructive to consider the results from recent state and local contests, where the Democrats have secured notable victories in key areas like Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City. These results suggest a heightened sensitivity among the electorate to local economic pressures, primarily the cost of basic goods and services. When the public's overall approval of the former president's handling of the cost of living hovers significantly lower than his general approval rating, as evidenced by recent polls where economic management approval sat at only 31%, it is highly probable that voters are differentiating between overall economic growth and their immediate personal financial stress. The Republican leadership is therefore placed in the difficult position of having to actively campaign on policies that they claim will deliver future relief, while simultaneously attempting to mitigate the political damage caused by current inflationary pressures. Trump has predictably begun to shift his focus, actively campaigning for GOP candidates and highlighting the expected successes of his economic agenda, emphasizing that tax cuts and the application of tariffs on foreign goods are designed ultimately to provide greater financial breathing room for American families. However, given the evidence from recent electoral contests, the success of this strategy hinges entirely upon whether the promised economic relief can tangibly manifest in the voters' lives within the narrow window remaining before the full weight of the midterm campaigning begins.
if the delayed benefits Trump referenced failed to emerge, or if inflation continues its upward trajectory, the difficult path he described for Republicans retaining the House may become statistically insurmountable.
The current outlook suggests a political environment characterized by deep uncertainty, demanding an objective and cautious analysis of whether economic policies designed for long-term transformation can yield the rapid political dividends needed to secure legislative control. The challenging landscape outlined by political strategists finds its most explicit confirmation not from opposition analysts, but from the highest echelons of the Republican Party itself, specifically through recent commentary offered by President Donald Trump to the Wall Street Journal. This admission, characterized by a notable lack of the typical unwavering confidence often projected by the leader, provides critical insight into the internal calculations regarding the 2026 midterm elections. When pressed on the trajectory, the president's response was notably measured, stating, "We will see what happens. We should win, but, statistically, it's very hard to win." This acknowledgement that historical trends present a statistically formidable barrier to the incumbent party retaining legislative control, a concession rarely voiced publicly, underscores the gravity of the political environment. Furthermore, when directly confronted with the prospect of losing control of the House of Representatives, the president's candor continued, suggesting uncertainty because certain major economic policies have yet to fully materialize in a perceivable benefit to the electorate, a phenomenon he articulated by noting, "I don't know when all this money is going to kick in." This statement forms the pivot point of the current electoral conflict, suggesting that the timing mismatch between the initiation of transformative macroeconomic initiatives and the necessary delivery of immediate, tangible gains to the average voter poses the most significant political risk. It is a fundamental challenge of modern governance. Policies designed for a multi-year horizon often clash violently with the two-year cycle of congressional elections. One hypothesis for this delay is the sheer scale and complexity of the economic overhaul championed by the administration, which includes broad application of tariffs on imports and significant investment flows predicated on the belief that these actions are fundamentally restructuring the American economy toward greater self-sufficiency and manufacturing dominance. The president has consistently asserted that these measures are generating robust job growth, fueling the stock market, and attracting substantial new investment into the nation, ultimately claiming, "I created the greatest economy in history." However, the political reality appears to be dictated less by the aggregate economic statistics and more by the highly personal metric of the cost of living. This disparity is likely what prompted the president to concede that despite the undeniable signs of macroeconomic vigor, maybe it takes people a while to understand all these things. The central, unresolved political tension remains the issue of inflation. While the administration has, at times, dismissed rising costs as a political hoax or assigned blame squarely to the previous administration's policies, there has been a noticeable shift toward promising imminent relief tied directly to the maturation of the current economic strategy. Specifically, the president suggested that by the time the election cycle intensifies, which is interpreted to mean within the next several months, price stability will have been restored, noting, "I think our prices are going to be in good shape." This hopeful projection relies heavily on the accelerated efficacy of recent administrative actions, such as the cancellation of tariffs on over 200 food items, a move that was arguably a direct response to mounting consumer anxiety over grocery costs. The political peril is magnified by recent Democratic victories in state and local elections across key battleground areas, including Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City, where the cost of living was consistently cited as the primary concern for voters. Even though the president's overall approval rating has seen a modest uptick, polling data indicates a significant vulnerability. Only 31% of respondents express approval of his performance in controlling the cost of living. This metric strongly suggests that the persuasive narrative surrounding macroeconomic achievements is not yet translating into voter confidence at the supermarket or the gas pump. Consequently, the strategy appears to be transitioning into a phase of heightened direct engagement. Reports indicate the president has begun actively campaigning for Republican candidates, placing renewed emphasis on the core promises of tax reductions and the long-term benefit derived from foreign tariffs, assuring families that these measures will ultimately translate into greater disposable income.
The future political landscape is thus positioned precariously on a strategic tightrope. The Republican Party must convince a skeptical electorate, burdened by lingering price pressures, that the benefits of transformative economic policy are not merely theoretical or statistical, but are manifesting now, or at least imminently enough to justify retaining legislative control.
The challenge is not merely winning an argument about numbers, but achieving an accelerated perceptual shift among voters whose primary interaction with the economy is through the rising expense of daily life. Should this acceleration fail to materialize before the electoral clock runs out, the admitted statistically difficult path may indeed prove insurmountable, delivering a legislative setback that could dramatically reshape the remaining presidential term. The resolution of this political conflict will therefore hinge entirely on whether the electorate rewards the administration for its promise of future prosperity or punishes it for the present pain of elevated prices. We conclude this analysis with the recognition that the political environment remains fluid and highly sensitive to external economic shock. The definitive outcome of the midterms is not yet written, only heavily weighted by the challenging metrics of public sentiment. The analysis and commentary presented in this video are based on publicly available sources and represent the channel's own perspective and interpretation of political and economic trends.